Welcome to the Fit for Halter podcast. I'm your host, Amy Zabel, and we're here to bring content and community to the amateur halter exhibitor. Welcome to the Fit for Halter podcast. I'm excited to introduce to you Abby Carpenter. You're going to get to meet the person behind the Educated Cowgirl Podcast. So Abby, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for reaching out to me. I have been the interviewer for a while, but it's a little bit different being on this side of it. Like you said, my name is Abby Carpenter. I am from Franktown, Colorado. I have been riding horses for my entire life. I was lucky enough to be born into a horse family. Both my parents have horses in their blood too, from Arabians, quarter horses, thoroughbreds. They've done a lot of it. But I mostly showed in the quarter horse circuit as a youth in the hunter jumpers on the quarter horse circuit. And then I've competed in college on a horse judging team and with the IHSA team. And then I have a crazy college story, which I won't go into, but it's a really long story. Yeah, and I work full-time. My full-time job is for the Arabian Horse Association. So the Educated Cowgirls kind of started as my passion project and kind of morphing into something I would like to have more full-time one day, but got to pay the bills. So yes.
And pay for your horses, right?
Yes, and pay for my horses, yes.
Right. I know that you touched on it a little bit, but tell us more about the Educated Cowgirl. How did you come up with the name, and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, so this is such a big question, but an important one. I think when I was thinking about my podcast, before I even wrote my first episode, it was just an idea in my head that God put there. I knew I wanted the name to stand out and I would reflect what it would mean to people. And as I was brainstorming ideas and what I thought would make the biggest impact, I thought about how I love educating others, what it means to be a cowgirl in the equine and Western industries, and my education background. So I chose the Educated Cowgirl because I knew when people saw that name, they would not only get a sense of who I am as a host, but it would hopefully make them think about what that really means to them in the industry and showing how important education is in the industry. For me, being a cowgirl, I'm going to break it up a little bit, doesn't just mean someone who dresses in a cowboy hat, jeans, boots, and spurs. To me, a cowgirl is even if you ride English or saddle seat or whatever saddle you ride in. I've said this since I started. To me, an equestrian is a cowgirl and a cowgirl is an equestrian. So an educated cowgirl, and I'm going to pull from some of my guests who have also asked this question, is to make the industry better and to never think you know everything. To keep an open mind and always be willing to learn from other disciplines, other breeds, asking the right questions to get better yourself, and then working together as a community for the future generations of the industry.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
I appreciate the amount of thought that you put into that and the level of importance that you place not only on education, because I think horse people in general, perhaps, are lifelong learners, maybe as a group. But I appreciate what you mentioned about really the inclusivity of cowgirl, and no matter what kind of discipline, just thinking about leveling the playing field of the horse industry and that we all can carry that title, so to speak.
Yes, because another reason I started was I grew up with when YouTube was first starting out, and I always would see YouTube videos of English versus Western, and they would always be skewed more towards English is better or Western is better, and it kind of made this gap between everything, and so I want to help bridge that gap. So
yeah, I love it. That's awesome. So you talked a little bit about the purpose of your podcast. Do you have a specific audience that you're trying to target?
Yeah, so when I was thinking through this question, when I'm trying to reach people with my podcast, it kind of ties into my why behind it. As I said, I was born and raised in the horse world, and I've always loved horses and the industry and being a part of all of it, from showing, teaching lessons, working shows and events, and being behind the scenes and more. So something I discovered over my life is that no matter what level you start at, we all join for the same reason, because we were bitten by the horse bug. Whether we were little girls or boys that petted a horse for the first time on a vacation or fell in love with horse movies, whatever, we all joined because we love horses. So my podcast, my reasons for starting it was to not only promote and advocate for bringing the community together, as I said, but to also create meaningful conversations and inspire change in the industry to make it better for those of us who are already involved with horses, but to help reach the general public as well, who they like horses, but want to learn more and find out how they can be involved themselves. And kind of, I know a lot of non-horse people, they'll say the fears of, oh, horses are too big, or they're scary, or they're wild. And I kind of want to educate them a little more and be like, okay, why do you have that fear though? Like, because they're not really that scary. Like, they're probably the most gentle horses if they're treated right. So I'm trying to reach people in the industry, obviously, because we want to create change. We want things to be better in the industry, but I would love to go beyond that and bring people in who may necessarily not be involved as much as a lot of us are.
Yeah, we have some similar or alignment, I should say, in that different topics potentially, but yeah, I think any horse podcast that I've listened to in the last couple of months, there's a lot of common ground in wanting to bring people into the industry, provide education, bring people together, establish community in any way that we can at whatever level people engage with horses, right? To attending a horse show as a spectator or somebody who's actually involved.
Yeah.
There's, I think, a lot more unity than we might think or give ourselves credit for. I think there's potentially a lot more unity in the industry. Yeah.
Yes.
And like you said, the horse bug. Yeah,
yes.
I was bit. I used to call it a disease, which is probably not a great thing to call it anymore. But yes, the horse thing that my parents thought, well, let's see how it goes. Let's test it out. Let's do the riding lessons. And
yeah, I mean,
here I am.
The horse bug got me in the womb when my mom was pregnant with me. But for my dad, when my dad bought his first horse, his dad, my grandpa, wasn't actually too happy about it. They came from their families, like my mom, her parents had a farm, but they're really the only ones that stuck with it out of all their siblings, with horses in particular. So yeah.
Well, let's shift. Thank you for sharing all that. I appreciate hearing the story and the why behind what we listen to. So shifting to the content of your podcast and some of your guests and things that you're learning, what are some of the most significant things that you've learned about horses from interviewing your guests?
Yeah, so I'm so glad you asked this question. This is a really good one. Good question. And I could say so much here. There's so much I could say because I've had some incredible guests so far. And will in the future. I have an episode coming out this week that will be a really good one. As I did, of course, know a lot about horses before this podcast, but probably some of the most significant things I have learned so far from my guests that I've interviewed is that horses can do so much for so many people in their lives, and amazing things that can change their lives completely. From Anna McLean, who she left the entertainment industry to start a career as an assistant racehorse trainer, to people creating amazing businesses that support the horse physically and give people the opportunities to live the life they have dreamed for themselves, where they don't have to work a 9 to 5 and then go ride after work. I truly believe that there is nothing the horse can't do for everyone. And that's also something I want to share with everyone, is that horses have this incredible power to bring people together from all over the country and the world. I was fortunate last year to attend the NRHA European Futurity in Italy, and help out with the Youth World Reining Cup, which you can hear more about with my episode with Sarah Honegger. And these kids that came for this competition, they were from probably 15 different countries, and they all spoke different languages and different cultures that they came from, but they formed these really strong friendships. Like, a lot of them are still in contact today, and these great experiences because of, one, the sport of reining, but the horse. So again, I could say so much here, but I know that what the horse has done for me in my life and my career, and they have taken my life in so many different directions. And I'm sure a lot of other people can say that their life is not a straight timeline because of horses. But two things that have always remained consistent in my life has been God and horses. And that is something I hope to reach people with as I continue to help the industry. And something that I've learned also from my guests is that horses have always been in their lives too. So in some way or another.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Common ground, lots of it.
Yes.
So then similarly, what have you learned? And you kind of touched on this a little bit when you responded to the previous question about horses. What are some of the common threads you've seen in horse people?
Yeah. So yeah, as you said, this ties into the last question a little bit. I've learned so much, and I hope to learn more as I bring more guests on and grow my listeners as more people share and listen to episodes. But I think something else I have learned about horse people is that we are very invested in finding new ways to introduce people to horses riding and giving kids and adults fun, safe experiences that will encourage them to want to be a part of the industry. And I mentioned this a tiny bit, before, about fears people have from looking in on the outside, about they're big, they're unpredictable, and so on. It's so dangerous. Can sometimes come from them having a bad experience in their younger days. And that's something I've observed, not just since starting the podcast, but over the lifetime, it comes from them going on a trail ride, and the person running the trail riding group didn't really understand, this person's never ridden a horse, so they just thought this horse was broke, and then something goes wrong. So it is important that myself as an instructor and trainers give the first-time riders opportunities to make it okay to learn on good, safe, reliable lesson horses. So that's probably something I've learned from both guests and listeners.
That's good. I like what you said about the creative ways that horse people bring other people into the industry, which is so true. Like, I feel like we invite them to anything. Come to our house, come to the barn, come to the show, go to an event, like, because our passion runs deep and we want other people to experience it.
Yeah. And I talk about it with my episode with Billy Smith about like what Taylor Sheridan has done for the industry has helped so much, from introducing, I'm going to say it, Yellowstone and his TV shows, and then the Run for a Million. Like, he's brought in a whole new audience of people into horses and riding and everything. So
yeah. Something else I think about too is those of us who have day jobs that aren't in a barn or with horses, or even in the horse industry, like the difference between what I look like during the day at my day job versus how I look at night.
Yeah.
Two completely different animals. On the weekend when I'm at a horse show, it is a different ball game, and so uniquely different from an office environment that I feel like I've had coworkers and friends say, whoa, I didn't know that about you, which might be code for, wow, you needed a shower, you needed to brush your hair, you needed some clean clothes, all the above, right? But nice way of saying, whoo, that's different. But all that to say, I think you're right. Horsey folks liking to bring, or trying to bring, non-horsey folks into the environment, just to maybe diminish the fear or expose a family or a friend to horses and what we love to do.
Yes. Yeah.
So looking at your podcast, kind of the mechanics of that, how much time do you spend each week working on your podcast?
Yeah, this one I had to think about a little bit because I'm not really good at keeping track of this kind of stuff. But I feel like I know I can, like, when I say I'm editing an episode or working on the blog post for an episode or the social media side of it, I can go like 3 or 4 hours and I'm like, oh, it's 4 o'clock already and I have been on the computer since 1 o'clock. Like in one day during the week. However, when I think about each week, whether it's a week I release an episode or an off week, as I release bi-weekly, as I've told you, or I try the best I can to, when I'm brainstorming topics or writing down ideas or researching who I want to bring on next, there probably isn't a day that I'm not thinking about it. And creating little ideas. Like, even if I don't have my computer, I'll like write it down in my notes on my phone, like ideas. And even if it's like right before I'm about to go to sleep or something I want to include on the prologue of an episode or something like that. And as I told you last week in our previous conversation, I only want to provide my listeners with high quality topics and conversations that they can feel inspired by, that will encourage them and educate them about people I bring onto the show and what they can take from the episodes to help the horse community and bridge the gap, as I said, between disciplines and breeds and more. So yeah, there's always something in my brain about the podcast. Like, even if I'm doing my full-time job, which for the record, I am very committed to.
Fine print.
But there's always something in the back of my brain that is about my podcast. Like, even if it's like just checking how many downloads I've gotten on my newest episode, or if I've checking on a social media post or whatever, there's always something going on about it. So in my brain.
Yeah. I can relate to that.
Yeah.
I hesitate in saying addicting because I don't know that I think about it all the time, but it's happening a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, thinking about guests and rehashing an interview or thinking
Yes.
about the future. And honestly, trying to keep up with social media
Hmm.
demands either inflicted expectations or,
Hmm.
just the whole
Yeah.
idea of keeping up with the amount of posts or comments or
Or
you name it.
designing something on Canva or whatever.
Yes,
Yeah.
agreed. Yeah. So when you think about selecting guests for
Hmm.
your interviews, I know you mentioned bringing inspiring content.
Hmm.
What's kind of the maybe a checklist that you might use for bringing guests on or topics even?
Yeah. So I don't know if it's really a checklist, but I kind of, as I told you, being a podcast host, I think is so cool and amazing because you have the ability to branch out and get out of your comfort zone and invite people onto the podcast that you want to talk to and learn from yourself. And those who I feel have made big strides in the industry already to make real change and want to give advice or help share what they have done and are continuing to do for the industry, but most importantly, the horse, because it all goes back to that, to them. As far as coming up with episode topics, it's really from learning to be more observant. That's something that I'm always working on myself, is keeping my ears open, my eyes, and my mind to things going on around me that are relevant and important now that will impact the future generations of the industry.
It's good.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff.
Yeah,
I don't necessarily think that deep when I'm
I mean,
thinking
I
about
just,
guests and topics.
yeah,
I
I
really
just think
appreciate that.
about how they could relate to the message that I'm trying to showcase with my podcast and what I'm hoping to do with the industry and the impact that I can make and that they can make and we can make together. So,
Yeah, I appreciate that.
mm-hmm.
That's why I enjoy interacting with you, because I feel like that is happening naturally. Like you're good at that. It's what you think of,
Thank
and
you.
it's what you're good at. Kind of a bigger question,
Mm-hmm,
or
mm-hmm.
more of a global question. What are some of the biggest needs in the horse industry?
Oh, this is again a question that there's so much here that because there's a lot of needs in the industry from participation to the economy, everything. And all of my guests so far have answered this question in their own way, not directly, but in their own way. But to me, some of the biggest needs in the industry is education, as I've said, and how we are presenting what we do in this world to the public and how we care and work with these amazing animals. I mean, I think a lot of the misinformation we see out there about certain disciplines and aspects of the industry come from people sharing something that they think is a fact, but they only really have half the story. So then there's a miscommunication there, which then people only see one side. And unfortunately, sometimes it can be the negative side or one bad person, and it can turn people away from investigating further into the truth behind it and discovering for themselves what is actually going on. Like what, and if we can continue to work together, I think to think critically and creatively about the problems that, trust me, we are not, we, as you know, we are not blind to in this industry. We're not blind to the problems. But if we work together to find a solution to make to make that impact for the future and to help us do better next time, or do better by the horse, that is something that I think could be really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good. Good stuff to think about. On the flip side of that, through your guests or just being a part of the horse industry, even in your day job, what are some of the greatest improvements that you've seen in the industry?
Yeah. So a lot of the biggest improvements that I've seen have been very public on social media, are, I think, relative to equine welfare and how we are regulating medications and drugs and the care of the horses from racing, rodeo, breed shows, and so on. I mean, I know there is still a bit that might slip by, but I believe overall a majority of horse owners, trainers, and breeders love the horses they care for so much and only want what is best for their safety and well-being, that they're probably more strict about what goes into their horses' bodies than what the public may see on social media or read about in an article. Another improvement that I think is really good for the industry is TikTok and social media, because people can see more online and learn more about things. I mean, I don't think there isn't a single horse person who doesn't follow or know about Katie Van Slyke in Tennessee, as she has blown up so much. And I love that because of her audience. More people are learning not only about breeding, but she also talks about horse care and other animal care and the industry and the show world, and kind of gives people behind the scenes, even because there's people that follow her that are very urbanized. So I think that's so good. And I think like a lot of people will say like, oh, TikTok, it's so addicting, there's so many negative things, but there's also so much positivity that can come from those videos, and I've learned so much more actually. But with that said, we do need to still stay alert to those online scams and the misinformation from people, because it is out there. From those who, I said earlier, only have part of the facts. Like, I'm going to say it, during the Kentucky Derby, there were some people that posted some videos about things that they thought that they knew about the racing world, but that may have been how it was back then, but like, we've gotten so strict. And there was someone who, she breeds thoroughbreds, that replied to that video and was like, so actually, she kind of set out the facts. So it's people taking the misinformation and miscommunications and not arguing with those people, but just being like, here's the truth of what you're saying. Here's what is actually going on. So much more I could say with this question, but overall, I think we have already seen a lot of change just from conversations with my podcast, other equine related podcasts, and discussions with people in associations like mine or AQHA, or I think there's people in this industry who they want to get ahead of PETA and the other activists who think that they know better than us. Just gonna be blunt about that one. But they want to create change. They want things to be better so it's safer for us as the horse owners and safer for the horse. Like with your podcast with Halter, like you're educating people about halter classes and increasing awareness of that part of shows and
Mm-hmm.
breaking down those stereotypes. So I
Mm-hmm.
think there's so many improvements I've seen. Like there's people are becoming more creative, even with increasing participation at shows. Like with NRHA, they're having more incentives for youth to have a way to decrease their show bill for parents, and it's so great.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know much about a lot of the associations that you're involved in or have experience with or have grown up really around. But I see a lot of clubs at the state level, regional level, who are really making an effort to engage with more people.
Yes.
By adjusting show bills, combining a breed show with an open show,
Yeah.
promoting shows as no bling. I know Illinois Paint Horse Association has a show coming up that's a no bling show. So lowering the expectation for equipment, perhaps, to make an easier entry for somebody who wants to show at a breed level show. So it's a combination of open show and breed show where people can get a taste for that, meet some other folks. Yeah. So I see a lot of clubs doing that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's good. Everybody wins in that situation.
Yeah, because it all starts with those people with the club level shows, and I think a lot of people are intimidated to go a step beyond to the quarter horse circuits and the bigger, longer shows, because they're like, well, I can't afford it. I don't have the right horse. I don't have the right. I had so many secondhand show clothes as a kid. It's not even funny. I had a showmanship outfit that when my mom bought it at Texas State 4-H Horse Show, it was like dripping on me, and then she took it to the tailor, and there's always a way. If you want a show, there's always a way to do it. If you want a rodeo, there's a way to do with that. It's anything. So
yeah. So tell us what your future plans are for the Educated Cowgirl.
Yeah. So just like I believe there are big things for the industry, I have my own big dreams and goals for TEC. I hope to obviously continue to grow my listeners, grow my followers, have great guests, even more guests and everything, reach more people. But I hope that as my show grows, that so too will the impact I can make on the industry and the changes I hope to inspire in others, as I've said, to also want to see things better for the horse and for the future generations, because that is something also really important to me, is the youth, and making things better for them. I also would love to expand to be able to maybe provide live shows at equine shows maybe in a few years, and speaking opportunities. Something I was actually thinking about over this past weekend, and it's something I did a little bit when I was little with my mom, is work with schools in the area to teach kids more about horses and the industry, and maybe give them opportunities to pet one. When me and my mom would go when I was little, we would go and start out in the classroom, and I would come in my English show outfit, and we'd teach them, and then we'd have my old gelding tied out to the trailer, and we'd let them go out there, and we'd teach them about grooming tools. We'd let them pet my horse and everything. So, and I know schools have gotten a lot more stricter about that kind of thing, but nowadays, but I think as a lot of kids are being more urbanized, we need to make sure that we still educate them about the Western ag and equine industries. I also hope to expand my brand with a merch line that I hope to start designing and making more plans for that. And then have a riding lesson program teaching English and Western lessons, as I am certified with CHA. to adults and children of all ages and levels of riding. So that's just a basic what I want to do.
I'm tired just thinking about it. That's awesome, though. I appreciate just your future thinking, forward thinking about where you're headed and how you want to continue to serve the industry and the horse people.
Yeah, I don't know if it shows how much I thought about this before I launched last February, but I was thinking about it for a long time before I launched my first episode, so.
Lots of time. Yes, it's clear that you've put a lot of thought into it. So tell us about your own horse journey. When did you first start riding, or do you ride often or show?
Yeah, so I can't remember the exact age I started riding, but there's photos of me as a baby on a horse. But I think my first show was a lead line class when I was 8. I still have the trophy. From Bourbon County 4-H in Kentucky, lead line class. I obviously started riding in my lessons in Kentucky because I was born in Lexington. And yeah, so I showed on just some small English shows in Kentucky. And then when I moved to Texas is when I started on the quarter horse circuit, started jumping. I'm not going to lie, the furthest Western I got as in my youth career was showmanship and halter. And so, so I showed all through AQHA. I showed 4-H in Texas. And then when I moved to Colorado in 2010, school I had a little bit of a break from showing. And then I showed on the IHSA team in Wyoming, for a couple years, which that was I think everyone that rides horses, if you want to ride in college, you should do IHSA or NCEA or whatever, because it's such a good experience to get on different horses and really improve your riding skills. So yeah, and then I was introduced to the sport of ranch sorting, or RSNC as the association is called, in 2014, when I moved in with the Wolf family, who they founded RSNC. Dave Wolf is the main founder. And I have been in that world for a while. I've worked for different quarter horse trainers. I've worked for I've worked for different quarter horse trainers. I worked for a course trainer in Grand Junction, Colorado. So I was on the Western Slope for a couple years. That was when I was doing my bachelor's at Colorado Mesa. And then it was not until I moved back to the Eastern Slope, or the Front Range, as we call it in Colorado, where I got back into sorting. I bought my mare in 2020, and I've been sorting on her for the past 4 years. And so I hope to just keep improving with her with that and keep moving up. They have a rating system for going through. So I'm rated a 2 or a rookie. And so I just hope to keep improving with my sorting ability and continue to learn to be a better partner for my horse, and really just have the best partnership and teamwork that we can have. So yeah. It's a lot. I could go more into my college life, but it's kind of a wild ride of my college life. I didn't go to one school. I went to 3-4 different schools.
Yeah.
In college. So, yeah.
Not everybody's journey is a straight line, right?
Yeah. Nope. As I mentioned, no horse person's timeline is a straight line. It's up, valley, up, valley. Yeah.
Yeah. But you end up in the same place potentially.
Yes. Yeah.
It's good.
Always comes back to God and horses for me. So.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I've learned in my short history with podcasting is, like I said, the unity. I think there's a tremendous amount of unity in the horse industry, even though sometimes the negativity or the challenges or the controversy pops up and gets kind of in the front of things. But I've learned that people's desire to get good information out to the horse community,
Yes.
that's pretty universal.
Yes.
Of course, the love of the horse is universal. And so that's one of the reasons that I wanted to share this conversation with my new audience is horse information is horse information, right? If it's correct and it's good, we have a love of horses, and we don't all, my listeners haven't necessarily started in the halter industry. Maybe they started somewhere else. And so that's not where I started either. But our common ground and united desire to bring information to our communities about horses that's good quality, not only in sound and production, but guests and interviews and content. So thank you for taking the time. I appreciate it. Tell us how, absolutely. Yeah. Glad that I found you. I think it might have been through a reel or something on Facebook. I didn't know that you existed, and I was so fired up to see another podcast friend. So how can we find you?
Yeah.
How can we find the Educated Cowgirl?
Yes. So I am on Facebook and Instagram at the Educated Cowgirl. I'm also on TikTok at the same, the Educated Cowgirl. I'm working on posting more there, but that comes with more learning video skills. And then I also have a website, theeducatedcowgirl.com. I post a blog post with each episode. So go there. You can read more information and then listen to the episode. It's all good, and see more pictures of my guests. So yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Appreciate your time and sharing your heart for the industry.
Hey, if you're an amateur or a professional willing to share your story or bring content that helps us with our halter horses, you can email me at fitforhalter@gmail.com.